just one more procedure to do. It's going to follow the same sort of methods as the earlier versions. So it's going to set up a query, then it's going to connect to the database, then it's going to do something with the database, it's going to close the database. But then once we've got the information, we need to learn how to sort of print that out. So we're going to do that. Let's just minimize that. We're going to do that in here. So I'm going to start off with the same sort of thing again. The query equals, and you've done this query yourself. Select star from high school. So this should be familiar to you now. Order by, and if you're not sure what order by is, this is where we're sorting them into order. Now, we probably didn't teach that, I probably didn't go through that in the SQL section, but if you look on the back wall, you'll see order by written in the SQL query. So order by the score field, because we want to order it by the score, not the name. And we want it to be the biggest number first and the smallest number last. So that is descending. So 20, 18, 17, 16, they are descending. But I'm going to put this in. I'm going to limit it just to the top 5 scores. I've got 6 in here. So when I run this, it should not show me this one here, John 2. So I can already predict what's going to happen. It's going to have Mary, then John with 20, Mabel with 20, Fred with 18, Felicity with 12, and John isn't going to appear in the table. So that is my query that I'm going to run. So the next thing is just connect to the database. So I can just do db equals d.connect. In fact, I'm going to change these things up here before I actually before I finish the video, sorry. db.connect, and what are we connecting to? We're connecting to the high score table. The reason why I said that was it'd just be quicker just to copy and paste all of this rather than keep writing it out. Silly me, I use different variables. Then we're going to set up our cursor equals the database cursor. And because we're playing around with a file, we need try. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to execute that cursor, that query. So try, cursor dot execute the query. So it's going to run this query and then some results are going to be returned. So this next line is just nowhere in your exam or anything anywhere. So just live with it. The data is going to be equal to whatever is at the cursor. And we are going to fetch all of the data. There's different ways we can do things. Not even going to go into it because there are so many different options. Let's just live with that. So if I've got my data here, all of the data in the table at this point in this data variable, I now really want to print it out to the screen. So just to check it, I might change how this appears a little bit later on. So I'm going to print, I want a new line so that it gives a bit of space. I'm going to type high, it's all in caps, high scores, and then I'm going to have a new line after it. Now I'm going to read all the data and place that on the screen. So the way I do that is by using a for loop. So for each row in the data that I got here. And if you really want to learn about this, let me know and I'll show you what all of this means and go through it bit by bit where the data comes from. However, I've got a feeling a lot of you won't do that. So what I need to do is now have a big print statement. So it's going to do this for each row in the data. So I'm going to print out these details on the screen. Print name, and I'm going to use a formatted string to do this. So that's going to be a placeholder. That's where the name's going to go. Then I'm going to use an escape character called the tab key, T for tab. And what that does is jumps over about 10 spaces before it prints the next one. So there's the tab. Then I'm going to have the score is going to be in position 1 in my format string. So I'm going to go format, and in here I need the data that I'm fetching from here. Now it's going to be in a variable called row. So I need row, which is going to be, all it is an array. So if I can just write somewhere, each row is going to be like this. And we've seen this before. John 20. So that would be a row. And what I'm doing is I'm just getting the first one, which in position 0. So row 0, and that is being placed here. And then I need to have my second variable, which is going to be this one, the score, which is 20, and that is row at position 1. So that's the first time through the loop. It will find whoever's the top, give me an array, I pull the values from the array, print them to the screen. Then, because data's got about 5 rows, it moves on to the next row, then pulls out that value, then moves on to the next row and pulls out that value, and so on until it's done all 5. And remember what I said, that's not going to appear because I've got 6 and I'm limiting it to 5. So that's that line of code and what it does. Now, okay, if we have an error at this point, what I'm going to do is actually use the error messages that are in SQLite 3, and that is D. So except, whoops, as long as you don't make an error in programming, except D, so it's SQLite 3, the file. There is a special, silly me. Let's cut that out, that needs to go in there. There is a special error message for a programmer error, and I'm going to print an error message to go with it if that doesn't appear. So I'm just going to do print and error has occurred. Please contact the programmer. Now, although this is not important, most of the error messages are like this. So you might have an index error, string error. I haven't been using them, I've just been using except. But this time I'm going to actually use the programmer error if anything happens. And that's basically it. We've got one line of code to go, which is the same as here and here, where I do db.close. And that's it. I've really written my program. But before I test it, what I'm going to do is change this to db so that it's the same. And just change that to cursor. And then you'll see just how the same programming pattern works out each time. db and db. So hopefully I've got them all in. I've probably missed one out. Just checking. No, now I'm consistent with all my procedures. I'm happy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the table just to make sure that this calls and still works. So where is it? There. I'm going to delete my high score table. Remember, it was 8 kilobytes. So I'm just going to chuck that in my bin. So when I run the program now, it's going to create the database, initialize the database, save the high score, and what I need to do is do this procedure here, show high scores. So I just need to type show high scores, and hopefully there'll be no errors and that will run. Fingers crossed, I always make an error. So if I run the module, so let's put that anagram thing up. We didn't need to, it already beat us to it. Did I close it? Probably. But there we go, we've got the high score table and we've got Mary who scored 22, so we can look at this one. Mary did indeed score the most. Then came John with 20, then Mabel with 20, and then Fred with 18, Felicity with 12, and there is no John because we only listed the top high scores. Now, maybe we could have tidied this up, so we just have name and score at the top. That would require a print statement like this, making sure we're not doing it each time. Print name, and then we'll tab it across, score, and then all I need to do here is take name out of there, score out of there. So put the first value in at 0, tab it across, put the second value in. I think that will be a little bit neater. So if I run this, there we go, high scores, name, score. And perhaps the end of there, we can put a new line so that we get a gap. Let's run that one again. There we go, high score table, name, score, and you might notice that we're getting multiple values of Mary coming up. That is because we've put Mary in 3 times, because every time we run this program, we're putting more people in. So it might be an idea while we're testing things out to delete that file every time we come across it. So if I get rid of high score, delete it, so we start over again. So if I run this program now, we'll only put the 5 in, and then we'll get the high score table as we expected. So that's it. The nice thing about this is we can reuse this over and over again. There's very little to change if we save and read something. The major parts that will change is just what we do with the information, which is down here. But creating a table with fields is just going to be that with different names. Saving information is just going to be this, with again different table name, different names here, and probably a different amount of variables there. And changing that name and changing this to match. Oh, and of course that. So none of the coding, but just the variables. And this one, we're going to read it the same. So pretty much all of this is going to be the same with just the change of a table and what we do with it. This is going to stay pretty much the same. It's only this bit of code here that we will need to think about and change for the application we're writing. Other than that, I would be happy to keep this. And of course, this is just our test data. It wouldn't appear. So there's not a lot of code, really, to manage a database, save data into a database, and have a high score table. If we were doing this with bubble sort or merge sort, pretty much just defining the bubble sort would probably take that much code without thinking about how we're going to store it and what we were going to do. So this is a much better way of doing things. It makes the data persist, so it's a file, and it uses SQL. What more could you want? So hopefully you enjoyed that. I bet you didn't. If you've copied it out, brilliant. Don't worry if you haven't. Hopefully you've understood something. At least I've been through the details with you, and it might add to your exam knowledge. Now we've got very little to do for the rest of our program, because now we can write files and we can save words. Now we can get a person's name and save it in the database, but we don't know what the score is at the moment. I think we need to go back to the main program, wind down those levels a bit, heading back down towards 2 or 3, and complete a little bit more of the main program. So copying all of these functions into our main program and then writing the game. So we'll start looking at that in the next video.